It's Talk Sports. I'm Harry here. The story that's been doing the rounds over the last couple of days, you might have heard it in the news actually. Mexico's co-hosting of the summer's FIFA World Cup could be compromised by the eruption of drug cartel violence. The threat of violence continues to loom across Mexico after a cartel rampage which took place on Sunday. The killing of the leader of Mexico's Jalisco new generation cartel known as El Mencho led to a wave of violence across the country. Been 10 vehicles loaded with cartel members heavily armored with automatics. They were guns mounted on the roofs of the trucks, and they would block the road, and they stopped us. I know enough Spanish that when they were saying solo cuchi solo che that they just wanted a car. The cartel show force shook Puerto Vallarta, including attack on the city's Costco store. Let's start with Mexico. The killing of cartel boss El Mencho has thrown the state of Jalisco into turmoil. And why does that matter for the World Cup? Because Jalisco is scheduled to host 4 World Cup matches. Now, this is not some peripheral venue. This is central to Mexico's hosting plans. Violence has escalated. Security forces are stretched. Local football matches have already been canceled. Foreign governments are issuing travel advisories for international fans. Perception is everything. And right now, that perception reeks of instability. Mexico's president just made a massive promise that she almost certainly cannot keep. On national television, Claudia Sheinbaum looked at the cameras and guaranteed total safety for the 2026 World Cup, claiming there would be no venue changes because everything is under control. She told the world that fans can come and the country is secure, but the timing of her statement couldn't have been any worse. While she was talking about safety, music, the BBC was filming a completely different reality on the ground at the exact same time. Their cameras caught armed convoys, burnt-out vehicles, and regular people being held at gunpoint in the streets. This wasn't just one bad day in a small town, but rather the start of a nationwide security collapse that has FIFA worried and foreign governments issuing urgent travel warnings. People are starting to ask the big question of whether Mexico can even host this tournament at all. This is the story of how the president got caught between her own words and a brutal reality, creating a global humiliation that might cost the country the World Cup entirely. The Code Red breakdown. What actually happened? To understand how things got this bad, we have to look at what triggered the chaos in the first place. Last week, Mexican authorities killed the leader of the Jalisco new generation cartel, a man known as Eleno, who ran one of the most dangerous criminal groups on the planet. On paper, taking him out looks like a huge victory for the government since the U.S. had wanted him for years on multiple indictments. The cartel itself was even declared a foreign terrorist organization just a few months ago, so his death should have been a turning point for the better. The problem here isn't that they caught him, but that the government decided to take him out just weeks before the World Cup. When you kill a leader with that much power, you don't get a peaceful transition of power, and instead, you get immediate and violent retaliation. Within hours of his death, the cartel went into overdrive across Jalisco state, with armed convoys rolling through major cities and setting up roadblocks on the main highways. They started setting vehicles on fire and engaging in massive gunfights with the National Guard, leading to the deaths of 25 officers in just 24 hours. That isn't just a small skirmish between police and criminals, but an active conflict zone in a state that is supposed to be welcoming the world. Guadalajara is the capital of Jalisco state and serves as one of Mexico's 4 World Cup host cities, meaning this violence is happening right where the matches are scheduled. The situation escalated fast as the fighting spread to a dozen different regions across the country within just a few days. Videos started flooding the internet, showing gunmen patrolling the streets in broad daylight, while thick black smoke billowed over entire neighborhoods. These men were driving military-grade vehicles through local streets like they own the place. And the local soccer leagues actually started canceling matches before the World Cup even began. The professional leagues looked at the situation and admitted they couldn't guarantee player safety, so they just called the games off. The reality of the situation hits even harder when you hear from the people who were actually there on the ground. A BBC correspondent in Puerto Vallarta spoke with a British man named Alan Percy, who has lived in Mexico for 9 years, running a dog sanctuary. On the Sunday when the violence erupted, he was driving his truck when he got stopped by a cartel convoy made up of 10 vehicles. These weren't just guys with handguns, but a full military-style unit with automatic weapons and guns mounted on the roofs of their trucks. Alan knew enough Spanish to realize they were taking his vehicle, so he handed it over and luckily walked away with his life. Even the local Costco in Puerto Vallarta got caught up in the chaos while regular customers were just trying to do their shopping. The mayor eventually admitted that if this turns into a full-scale war between different cartel factions, his local authorities simply don't have the resources to stop it. He said it directly to the press that they would struggle to cope, which is a terrifying thing to hear from a city leader. All of this is happening while Mexico is supposed to be getting ready for 13 World Cup matches, including 4 in the exact state that was literally burning. With the opening match scheduled for June 11, 2026, the clock is ticking. And right now, Mexico looks anything but ready. The president's hollow promise, where the humiliation begins. So, what exactly does the Mexican president do while her country is trapped in a massive security crisis? She goes on national television and makes a guarantee that sounds like she's living in a completely different reality from everyone else. Claudia Sheinbaum stood right in front of the cameras and told the world there would be total safety for the World Cup, insisting there would be no venue changes because everything is fine. She basically told everyone to come to Mexico because it's secure. But she said this while violence was literally erupting across Jalisco. Music. The National Guard was still trading gunfire with cartel members, and local governments were openly admitting they couldn't handle the chaos while she was talking. People were still being held at gunpoint in the streets. Yet, the president acted like none of it was happening. The global media picked up on that massive disconnect immediately, with outlets like the BBC, talkSPORT, and First Post all reporting on the same embarrassing gap between her promises and the bloody reality on the ground. It wasn't a subtle mistake. It was a jarring contradiction that makes you question every single word this government puts out. FIFA put out a response that was very carefully worded, saying they were closely monitoring the situation and consulting with local authorities. Music, which is just fancy diplomat speak for being terrified. You can bet that behind closed doors, they were having frantic conversations about contingency plans and moving matches. But the real blow to her credibility came from other governments who weren't playing along with the PR script. The U.S. State Department didn't just put out a travel advisory. They issued actual shelter-in-place orders for Americans in Jalisco. They told people to stay inside and lock their doors because the situation had become that unstable. Canada is co-hosting this entire tournament with Mexico and the United States, but they went ahead and canceled flights to the Portoa airport anyway. They didn't stop at a simple warning. They pulled their planes out entirely because they didn't trust the total safety guarantee. That is exactly when the president's promise turned into a symbol of a government that has completely lost control of its own story. When you tell the world everything is perfect while foreign governments are telling their citizens to hide in their rooms, you have zero credibility left. The humiliation wasn't just happening at home anymore. It was a global embarrassment, with every major sports outlet asking if Mexico is even capable of hosting this tournament. The global warning, why fans are being told to stay away. Now you've got foreign governments sounding the alarm, FIFA stuck in damage control mode, and the media wondering if Guadalajara should even be a host city. But the biggest problem for Mexico right now isn't just the gunmen in the streets. It's the fact that the world's perception of them has completely shifted. The 2026 World Cup was supposed to be a unified celebration across North America, where 3 countries came together and fans traveled freely between them. Instead of a massive global party that brings people together through football, this is turning into a horror story about instability and total chaos. Foreign governments have started issuing travel advisories specifically for fans who are planning to head to Mexico for the World Cup matches. These aren't just helpful suggestions. They are official warnings telling people to reconsider their travel and make sure they understand the life-threatening risks. When you are trying to sell tickets to a sporting event and governments are telling people not to show up, you've got a problem that no amount of money or PR can fix. Social media is already exploding with people wondering if FIFA will move the matches out of Guadalajara or shift them to the United States. The entire conversation has flipped from how amazing the tournament will be to whether the World Cup can even happen as planned. To make matters worse, FIFA has stayed almost completely silent, offering no real reassurances or actual contingency plans while the world speculates about the tournament falling apart. That silence creates a vacuum where the worst-case scenarios start to feel like a certainty. The ripple effect is spreading across the globe, and fans from Africa, Asia, and South America are now asking if they will even be able to get visas to attend. The Trump administration had already tightened up immigration controls and visa scrutiny, so international fans were already worried about being allowed into North America. When you add in the fact that Mexico is in total chaos, those fans are starting to think it's not even worth the effort to try. Then you have Trump's AI video taunting Canada after the US won ice hockey gold, which makes the three co-host nations look fractured and petty instead of unified. Co-hosting a massive event like this requires deep trust and seamless coordination. But right now, all we see is political theater and finger-pointing. Mark Carney and the Canadian leadership have looked incredibly calm and stable compared to what's happening south of their border. That contrast makes Mexico look even worse because one country is staying composed while the other is imploding on the security front. You simply cannot promise safety to the world and then have the global media warning people to stay away from your country. That isn't just a bad news cycle. It is a massive humiliation on the world stage that might actually cost Mexico the entire music tournament. That is the situation Mexico is facing right now, and it is not looking good for them. You have a president who made a big promise she simply cannot keep. While a security crisis continues to spiral out of control, the whole world is watching to see if the 2026 World Cup can even survive this mess. So, hit subscribe to stay updated on how this unfolds before June of 2026.